the same data usage at 254, more wide out angle?
That's correct. That is correct.
And this indicates 90 is what?
90 is the Massachusetts Turnpike.
And the area where this tower is located is in what town?
It's in Newton.
Calling attention, Inspector Visalli, to the next slide showing 3 separate entries. Can you describe what each entry means here?
Okay, well, in the middle we have that same recurring signaling packet gateway that's been signaling the phone all along, even though the phone is not in Connecticut. And then we see 2 other data usage marks made, recorded at the AT&T network. One of them being on the orange tower right here, which the number would be tower 34282, and the second one being approximately 9 minutes later, and that would be on tower, that would be 11 minutes later, 31689.
So the first tower to hit on this data usage is up here, sir, is that right?
That is correct.
And just by way of perspective, what are we looking at here? What highway is closest now?
That's like Route 128 in Lexington. There's a like a rest area off this, and that's Route 4 and 225 up on the north there.
So this is near the rest area?
Yeah, the rest area 4 and 225. The rest area would be somewhere right along Route 128 up over here.
And that's the first hit off of data usage. The second one you indicated is down here, correct?
Correct.
And is that south of the previous data hit?
That is correct.
And both of those hits appear to be in what city or town?
Lexington, Massachusetts.
What we see here, Inspector Visalli, is this kind of a summary of the last 3 tower... Inspector Visalli, can you tell us what this is representative of, this
It's
slide?
just the same map, but it zoomed back out so that we could see the previous tower down here in Newton and the 2 towers up here in Lexington.
Does it also include the time of the hits off of the towers?
It does.
So the time of this hit was what, sir?
Well, the time of that one would be, I believe, on the other slide. That would be back a slide.
But is it noted on...
Actually, it's noted on there, excuse me, 2:54 a.m. And the times on these other ones would be 3:04 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., which would correspond to the phone records.
And just by way of context, Inspector Visalli, are you familiar with the interchange of Interstate 90, the Massachusetts Turnpike, and 128?
I am.
And is that basically the area that I've circled right here?
That is correct.
And again, if you traveled that route before?
Many times.
How does one get from Route 90 up to 128 from there?
Up to 128, you'd have to come off, if you're going west, you'd come off the Mass Pike, there would be a ramp there, and if you take it, it would lead you to another area, kind of turns around, and you get on 128 north. It's kind of a complicated rotary. You'd come off, and then it would spin you around, and you'd have an opportunity to go north or south, and in this case, you'd have to take, you'd bear left, and it would go on the north side, and it would wind you kind of back around and take you back up north.
So from your own personal experience, is it easy to get lost there?
Objection. Relevance.
Sustained.
In any event, Inspector Visalli, we have the earliest hit on Route 128 was at what time, sir?
Earlier said on 128 is 3:04 a.m.
And the later hit at 3:15, was that south or north of that tower?
That is south of that tower.
And this direction that we're headed back, is that towards any other major interstate?
It's headed back towards Route 90, the Mass Turnpike.
So the tower hits indicated that the handset or the cell phone was previously on the Mass Turnpike heading west?
Correct.
Overruled as to that question.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the tower hits after that indicate what directionality?
Well, obviously, the handset went north for some reason and then came back south.
And all within how many minutes?
Roughly, 19 minutes?
And in your experience, Inspector Visalli, traveling that route, both professionally and personally, Does that generally correspond to the time it takes to get to the interstate where the rest area is and back down to the pike?
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
Have you driven that route before, sir?
I've driven it many times.
And are you familiar with about how far away the Mass Pike interchange with Route 95 or 128 is from that area of Lexington where the tower is?
I am.
And what's the distance of that?
Objection.
Grounds?
Objection. Relevant, improper opinion. It's not qualified.
Well, I'm not sure it's an opinion. I think it's the officer's knowledge.
Then relevance as to him.
Overruled.
About how far is that, sir?
About how far is it? Roughly 6-8 miles.
Objection. Speculation.
Overruled.
Inspector Visalli, calling your attention now to the next hit of any type relative to that cellular telephone and the AT&T network. Can you tell us what's on the next slide?
Okay, well, the important one would be, again, a data usage entry made by the AT&T network, and that'd be at 4:13 a.m., and it was made off this cell tower right up here. The number of it was 10947, and the LAC would be 5993.
And the elapsed time for that data usage is what, sir?
This one they enter is 31 minutes and 16 seconds.
And how does this location of this particular tower correspond to Interstate 84?
Well, it's right off of Interstate 84. It's right almost at the Massachusetts line. The Massachusetts Turnpike would be just north of here, going east to west, and this is, kind of running southwest.
And is this tower hit consistent with the handset being on the Interstate 84?
Correct.
And the area we see here, is this south and west of the previous tower hits you described?
It is.
Interstate 84, Inspector, where does 84 lead when you're traveling westbound?
Well, I mean, it comes off the Massachusetts Turnpike and goes all the way straight through Hartford, all the way through Connecticut to Danbury, Connecticut.
So we're calling your attention now to the next series of hits off of a tower relative to that cellular device as recorded by AT&T. Can you describe what we see on the next screen?
Okay, well, we see, at 4:44, 5:44, and 5:59, we see them recording various data entries on their network, and it's off this tower right here, the tower number being consistently 52451. And again, the latitude and longitude corresponds to where the tower is mapped, and the azimuth is listed there.
What, if any, significance does the azimuth have here, sir?
Well, we just show that the phone now is somewhere up in the Manchester, Connecticut area.
Does it remain, at least according to the data we see on the screen here and the data that you analyzed, sir, does that indicate that the phone stays hitting off of that tower for some period of time?
According to the way it's being tracked by AT&T, yes, it's in the Manchester, Connecticut area.
Calling your attention now, sir, to the next screen, can you tell us what this data entry indicates?
Okay, so what happens here is at 7:07, there's an inbound call that isn't completed. Looks, again, there's another call. I can't see the time. Is it 8:22 a.m. Inbound voice call from that number, not completed. All routed, looks like, to voicemail. We don't see any cell towers here. That'd be consistent with either the phone being off or being in an area, where it couldn't get any coverage.
And just to clarify that, so what we see here with the empty addresses as well as cell tower locations from 7:07 a.m. until, is that 10:47 a.m.?
Well, yeah, 10:27 is a text that also wasn't completed. So we don't see anything. We don't see actually any tower information till 10:47 a.m. Correct.
And the lack of tower information from 7:07 a.m. to 10:47 a.m. is consistent with what, sir?
It's consistent with the phone being off or being on, and being somewhere where it gets no coverage, or battery being dead or something like that. On the AT&T records, occasionally we might see again that repeating thing. The repeating thing, but that's just their network, just marking their network. It's not, doesn't mean the phone's on or anything like that. It's just consistent with how they store their records. But in this case, with the text messages and the voicemails coming in, the phone's more than likely off, or it's somewhere where it's not getting coverage, or like I said, the battery could be dead, anything like that. But nothing's being completed to the handset.
Calling your attention now to what you indicated where it does appear to now be on the network, July 16, 2012 at 10:47 in the morning. Is there anything that indicates it's now on the network, and if so, what tower is it hitting off of?
Yeah, well, it looks like it powers on briefly at this period, 10:47, 10:48. Like a quick mark is made for data usage. A couple incoming texts come into the phone, and they're all of them consistently off this tower right here. The tower would be 11892. Different LAC now, 5997. And the latitude and longitude, again, would be listed here with the azimuth. And that corresponds to the picture on the map right here where the cell tower would be.
And the azimuth would point in what direction, sir?
Azimuth would be 267 degrees, which is due west.
So this direction here?
Yeah, well, that's 270, so due west, yes. Again, like we went over it, I don't want to belabor it, but generally 60 degrees on either side.
Would this particular tower that we see here be the closest AT&T cellular tower to the address of 47 Newberry Street in Hartford?
It would, yes.
Or does that address, 47 Newberry Street, the address of Brooke Wilcox, to your understanding?
That is correct.
That's the same.
Whose address is that, sir, if you know?
That's an individual named Brooke Wilcox.
Inspector Visalli, calling your attention now to what we see on the screen in the next slide. We see a series of empty boxes, is that correct?
Correct.
Tell us
Correct.
what does that indicate?
There was also one at the end of the last slide. It looks like the phone just briefly came on, got some text messages, and now is off again.
How long is it off?
Well, roughly till 5:28 p.m. It looks like it powers on again at 5:28 p.m. and gets some text messages. Looks like they all come inbound, and then
When you say they all come inbound, can we tell that from this entry here?
yes, that's correct.
And for those inbound entries that come in, is it still hitting off of the same tower?
Same tower,
Same azimuth?
same azimuth, everything is identical. Yes, sir.
Calling your attention now to the remaining data from July 17th, 2012. What can you tell from this
It's
data
all
here?
consistent. It's the same thing. The phone, again, is not turned on, or it's an area where it can't get coverage. You know, it's not, nothing is getting through to the handset.
At least on this slide, sir, does that appear to be the case all the way until July 18th, 2012 at 8:52 in the morning?
Correct.
This last slide here with the data, can you indicate what we see here, what this information reflects?
Again, it's the same thing. Voice calls and text messages are coming into the phone. They're not hitting towers. The phone is more than likely off, or in an area where it's getting no coverage at all. And it looks like on July 19th at roughly 10:48 a.m., the phone comes on and starts receiving text messages.
At that point, does the AT&T network record data as to what cell tower that phone hits off of at 10:48 a.m.?
Correct. It's cell tower 12872, and the LAC would be 5994. And those are all, this is 12872, okay?
I'm sorry,
12872, they're all the same.
Same tower?
Correct. If you can go to the next slide, yes.
Is that the tower we see here, sir?
Correct, correct. That's in Bristol, Connecticut, and that equates to the latitude and longitude that was plotted on the map.
And do we describe what we see here and what this means?
It just means that it's, they're text messages, so there's no time recorded on them.
So a series of incoming text messages.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Calling attention now to the next slide, sir. What does that show?
It shows that, some data was used. It shows some shows a couple outgoing text, an incoming voice call, an outgoing voice call, and these are all between 10:48 a.m. and 11:42 a.m. on July 19th, and it's, again, corresponding, it shows the locations in red and green that correspond to the towers.
And the second tower, the first tower is one, is that a different one or the same one we've been talking about?
That is a different one. That is in Farmington, Connecticut, and this one is a different one.
Also in Farmington, Connecticut?
Correct.
Is Farmington close to Bristol, if you know?
I believe so.
And Inspector Visalli, do you have an opinion as to whether or not if somebody were at a hotel with their phone in Plainville, Massachusetts, is there any way they could hit off of these towers for all these entries we see?
Absolutely no way.
Inspector Visalli, I'm going to call your attention now to some additional work you did relative to this case. Were you asked to plot cell phone locations or do cell tower maps relative to a certain phone number that was given to you as 404-861-3292?
I was.
Placing on the screen what's been entered as Exhibit 251. Entry number 115. Is that the number that you were asked to plot locations for the dates of February 12th, 2013 and February 13th, 2013?
Yes,
And on this exhibit, that's indicated as JPD?
that is correct.
Inspector Visalli, obviously we don't need to go through each and every entry, but describe again generally what this chart shows.
This is just the AT&T records put in chronological order for the exhibit.
And that in chronological by voice, text, and data.
Correct. I believe on this phone there is no data service, so we won't see any data.
The same with the second slide is also part of that same compilation record, is that correct?
That is correct.
Calling your attention now to the next slide, which indicates a starting time of February 12th, 2013. Tell us what we see on this slide.
Okay, we see some voice calls. They're actually all voice calls, made between 11:09 and 11:47 p.m. on the 12th, and we see the two different towers they're using, and these towers would be, you know, in West Palm Beach, Florida.
And where are these towers located in relation to the address of La Quinta Inn and Suites in West Palm Beach?
Well, that's the La Quinta that we plotted right there, and of course, this tower down here would be the corresponding one right here. This would be Tower 29314, and that would be the blue tower, which is 40903. Also, not 29049.
And this tower here that's in blue, is that the closest AT&T tower to La Quinta?
That is correct.
And as far as the second tower hit, sir, does that have any significance as far as being close to any particular area?
No, it's right off Route 95, and it's, you know, it's not too far from La Quinta either. Being at the La Quinta, your phone could use probably either of those towers.
What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, I mean, you know, again, the phone's looking for the strongest, cleanest channel to use, and, you know, a lot of it depends on topography, other things like that, you know, so, you know, if for some reason, you know, this channel was the top one, you know, had, you know, too much capacity on your phone, could go to the other tower. It just depends on, it can depend on anything. We are in a building sometimes, just, you know, it just depends on, you know, how you know, the strongest part of your signal. Obviously, if you see bars on your phone, you're walking from one side of a building to another side of the building, and you see them get stronger or weaker, you would know, you know, your phone's obviously always looking for the best channel, you know, best cell tower to use.
Next slide, sir, a series of what appear to be text messages, is that correct? At a
That's
time
correct.
starting at 12:05 a.m. on February 13th.
That's correct. They go from
Tell us
12
what these records reflect.
Just 12:05 to 12:09, they're text messages, and they look like both incoming and outgoing, and they're using this tower over here that's mapped out, the tower again, 9143, which, equates to this location and this address.
Is this also in West Palm Beach?
That's correct.
The next slide, sir, what does that show?
That shows the activity on the phone between 12:17 a.m. and 12:42 a.m. And it just includes, again, text messages and voice messages. And again, it includes all the towers that hit in between there.
And where are the towers located that hits in between there?
They're the same ones that we mapped out previously. They're right there. That's the blue one, obviously. That is 9042, and then this one here would be the red one down here, and that would be 9311.
And were those the two that you previously described were the closest towers to the La Quinta Hotel?
That's correct.
Calling attention now to the next slide, February 13th, 2013 at 1:23 a.m. Describe what we see, what data is reflected here, sir?
Okay, at 1:23 a.m., there's voice calls. A voice call looks like one that goes 123. It comes inbound, and there's an outbound voice call, and they're both being processed off this tower right here. The second one has beginning. It basically has two different azimuths because it starts on one sector and ends on another sector.
And where is this located in relation to the other towers, sir?
It's south of there, off of Route 95.
Heading south?
Heading south, correct.
Is that towards any major city?
Fort Lauderdale, Miami. That's just zooming out, same map.
The next tower hit at February 13th, the year 2013, 3:41 a.m. Tell us what this data reflects.
Now this is just a text message. An inbound text message comes to the phone, and it's processed off of this tower right here, which is in Miami, Florida.
And is there, the area circled here, what is that?
That's a club called Tootsie's Cabaret.
This particular tower that you've marked with the green, is that the closest AT&T cellular tower to Tootsie's Cabaret?
Absolutely, it's right next to it practically.
Calling your attention to the next screen, Inspector Visalli, what does that show us?
Just the activity on the phone. It's hitting all that same tower that we just had mapped out there. And that's the activity on the phone from 4:23 to 4:31 a.m.
And it's all hitting off of the same tower closest to Tootsie's?
That's correct.
Next slide, sir, is that essentially the same map, but this time with a actual satellite photograph?
That's correct. That's correct. That is like a Google Earth type map.
The large building here is what?
That's a club called Tootsie's Cabaret, and this would be the tower we mapped out previously right there.
Calling your attention now, sir, to the next entry, February 13th, the year 2013, 5:33 a.m. Tell us what the data reflects.
Okay, well, up on top, we're going to see two text messages. One's an outgoing text, and it's going to be on this tower right here. Correct. And it will correspond to the latitude and longitude that AT&T provided to us, and the tower number right there. The second one will be mapped on the next slide.
Does that show the second text in purple?
That's correct.
And the next screen, Inspector Visalli, does that show both tower hits together on a map?
Correct. This is the one at 5:33 a.m., and that is the one at 5:38 a.m.
Is that consistent with any particular movement?
Yeah, well, somebody's traveling north.
And where was Tootsie's Cabaret in relation to where we are now?
It's much farther south down here in Miami.
Inspector Visalli, were you asked to include in your maps the address of 3635 Fiscal Court in Riviera Beach, unincorporated portion of West Palm Beach?
I was.
And is that the star that we see there on
That
the
is
map?
correct. That is correct, yes.
Describe what data we see on this slide, sir.
Okay, so at 6:47 a.m., there's a text message. It's an outgoing text message, and it hits off this tower right here. Then at 6:47 a.m., there's also a voice call, 39 seconds, and it hits off the same tower right there.
And do you know about how far that tower is from 3635 Fiscal Court?
Roughly 2.5 miles.
Actually, let me go back. Where is the, on this screen here, which again shows the map of 3635 Fiscal Court, the tower hit about 2.5 miles away. Where is the La Quinta Suites in relation to this?
La Quinta is farther south, down this way and more over to the side, but off of 95, farther south down there.
So is this area north of West Palm Beach?
It is correct, yes.
And is this tower in a location between La Quinta and 3635 Fiscal Court?
That's correct.
The next slide, sir, with a series of data points, can you describe what that tells us?
Okay, these are voice calls that the phone makes between 7:13 a.m. and 7:52 a.m. The La Quinta is shown right here. This tower, again, would equate to the same color code right up here, that tower 9311, and then the blue tower would be right here. That would be tower, it's both 9043 and 29049. 2049 shows the azimuth, the other one does not. And then at 752, we can see this tower over here, and there's no azimuth on that one.
As far as these two towers, Inspector Visalli, were those the same two towers you previously testified were closest to La Quinta?
That's correct.
And at 752, this tower is some distance away from La Quinta?
Correct.
Calling your attention to the next slide, from 4:30 to 7:52, is that essentially what we just talked about?
Yeah, it's just a summary of it, correct.
And what's come up on the screen now, can you explain what this is?
No, it basically shows the starting point down here where the phone was originally located and the travel back up north with all the towers. It's the same towers that were plotted. It's just basically an overview, just to show that the phone traveled north and where it ended up.
So according to this, the phone travels north sometime after 4:30, is that correct?
That is correct. And over here on this slide, this is more of a inclusive of the general area where La Quinta is. First, you can see Fiscal Court up here. La Quinta is right here. Those are those three towers that it kind of has been using when it's in this general area. There's the tower hit at 6:47 a.m.
So 6:47 a.m., it's hitting at this tower that appears to be in between La Quinta and 3635 Fiscal Court?
Correct. And then at 7:14, 7:24, it's hitting that one. 7:13, it hits that one. And then again at 7:52, it would hit that one.
Finally, Inspector Visalli, were you asked to map the same time period, that being February 12th through February 13th of 2013, for a particular phone number purportedly belonging to Aaron Hernandez, labeled as 203-606-8969?
I was.
Starting with the first slide, sir, is that a similar slide that you've previously testified about?
Correct. As usual, this is everything put in the proper perspective with the text, data, and voicemails, just in a timeline.
Second slide the same, sir?
Absolutely.
A third slide the same?
It is the same.
Fourth slide the same?
That's correct.
Fifth? And then now we go to the sixth slide of what's been marked as AAA. Can you describe what the data here reflects, sir?
Okay, this just shows the activity on the phone between 7:04 p.m. and 7:40 p.m. And they're
On
all
the 12th, right?
On the 12th, excuse me, February 12th, yes. And they're all text messages. They're ingoing and outgoing, and it's showing us the tower it's using. and it's a common tower. We've seen it before. It's just 9046, and the latitude and longitude again corresponds to the location of the tower right there.
Is that the same tower that we talked about in the records, the 404 records?
That is correct.
And is that one of the towers that's closest to La Quinta Hotel?
That is correct.
Calling your attention now, sir, to the next slide. What does this data indicate?
This data indicates the activity between 7:48 p.m. on February 12th and 9:01 p.m. on February 12th, 2013.
And this area that we see here from about 8:30 p.m. until 8:42, what does that tell us?
The phone's either off or it's in an area where it's not getting coverage. It's nothing's coming, it's not being signaled and it's not making a mark on the network.
Going to the next slide, sir, where is this tower located?
This tower right here corresponds to that right there, and it's in West Palm Beach, Florida. Just in the close proximity of what we were looking at before the La Quinta.
And that was that the tower that you described that seemed to be south of La Quinta?
That is correct.
And that was the one that you indicated you could hit off of if you were in La Quinta, depending on where you were?
Correct. With the azimuth being 345 degrees, you absolutely could.
Calling your attention now, sir, to the next screen. What does this screen tell us starting at February 12th, 2013 at 9:02 p.m.?
This is the activity on that phone between 9:02 p.m. and 12:19 a.m.
And the tower hits, are those consistent with what we talked about before?
They're all the exact same towers we've been showing that are in the general vicinity of La Quinta, yes.
Calling your attention now to the next slide, February 13th, 2013, starting at 12:42 a.m. Can you tell us what your interpretation is of the data we see here?
Okay, well, the text messages, the phone's actually, people are trying to text the phone and it's not getting text messages because the phone, again, is in an area where it's either off or it doesn't get reception or whatnot. So it's nothing getting through the network. We do see some signaling gateways that happen with AT&T, but those are just, again, data's repeatedly signaling it. Those are, the package gateways that signal a network.
So do you have an opinion, Inspector Visalli, as to whether or not the phone appears to be off network from 12:39 a.m. until 7:42 a.m.?
That's correct. It is off.
And to be off network would mean what variables or what possibilities?
It's turned off. It's in an area where it doesn't get reception. The battery's dead. It's not getting any messages from the network. It's not registering anything that would record it back at the network as being on.
And calling your attention now to at some point when it does get back on network, which appears to be at approximately 7:42 a.m., is that correct?
That's correct, right here, 7:42 a.m.
And that's a text message?
Correct. It seems like text messages come inbound to the phone.
And what does it mean when you have a kind of strange number like this, starting with the ones, Inspector?
No, this is not capturing caller ID. Obviously, this is what the AT&T circuit is seeing come in. They somehow couldn't decipher it. Their circuit couldn't decipher what the phone number that came into the phone was.
And when the phone did eventually come back on network at approximately 7:40 in the morning, what towers does it hit off of, sir?
It's right there, the one by the same one we've been talking about along, the one by the La Quinta Inn.
The blue one?
Correct.
And was that the same tower that was hit off of the 404 number at approximately the same time?
That's correct.
Calling your attention now to the next slide, sir, starting at 7:42 a.m. I think you've already talked about that text, and this leads all the way to 8 a.m. Can you tell us what this data indicates?
Okay, so, consistently, it's been on that same tower we've just been going over. Now at 8:01, we see a data entry, and it's a different tower. Tower number, again, listed here, 30715, and it's south. It actually has a 0-degree azimuth, and it's south of there in a different address in West Palm Beach.
Is it south or north of West Palm?
It is. This is West Palm, but it's definitely south.
Calling your attention to the next slide, sir. Does that show, again, as you've already testified to, the two towers that are closest to La Quinta, and then this tower?
Correct, and that's the tower we just saw. It just shows the approximate of how south it is. It's right off of Route 95.
The next slide, sir, where does that indicate the phone is located?
It indicates it's over here, kind of off a tower in the Boynton Beach area of Florida, and that's dependent on, it shows us for a text and a voice call.
The next slide, sir, listed as February 13, 2013 at 8:13 a.m.
That would be a voice call, and again, the tower is a little bit farther south. It's just a quick voice call, and it was completed because it shows the DRR went through the circuit, and the latitude and longitude is listed right there.
The next slide at 8:16 a.m. and 8:17 a.m. Where does that place the phone?
A text entry made in the AT&T network, and then a data entry made show it a different tower south off of 95 in Delray Beach.
8:26 a.m. on February 13th, sir. Where does that indicate?
It indicates an outgoing voice call, and that's 11 seconds, and an outgoing voice call. And again, the tower, it's like the device is moving south because the tower is south of there.
8:42, 8:43. Does that also show a new tower?
Yeah, now it's down in Fort Lauderdale again. The towers are just off of Route 95, south of there in Fort Lauderdale, and the azimuth's 120 degrees.
And is that consistent with traveling on Route 95 in Florida?
That's correct.
Finally, at 2:13 at 9 a.m., you have additional entry of a tower hit at that time?
Correct. It's located right here, and it's down in Miami.
The next slide, sir, what does that show us?
Just shows us the activity on the phone from 9:12 a.m. to 9:46 a.m.
What do we see on the next slide, sir?
Those are all towers in the general vicinity of the Miami International Airport, and the phone, if you'll see, uses all those towers. Within this time period, it uses all those towers in that area.
That's what we see in the next slide.
Correct. It's using all those towers to process calls and text and data during that time period, up to around 10:34 when the phone looks like it goes off again.
And sir, these towers that are indicated here, are those generally consistent with the area of the Miami International Airport?
Yes, those are the ones we would use if you were at the airport.
And that's the next slide, what we see as well.
Those are those towers mapped out in the area, correct.
And the next slide, does that indicate the progression from the West Palm Beach area to the Miami International Airport?
It does.
And Inspector Visalli, although it's not included here on this sheet, or on this PowerPoint, did you also plot tower locations, or at least look at tower locations for the time after this?
I did.
And did that indicate any hits in other states?
Yeah, it looked like the phone showed up in Dallas, at the airport of Dallas. Then it went back off, ended up at an airport in Phoenix. It was on for a while in Phoenix, eventually went back off, showed up back the next day, I believe, in the airport in Newark, New Jersey, and then off again, and originally outside of the airport in Hartford, Connecticut. Bradley Airport.
Inspector Visalli, as you previously testified to, does part of your knowledge and expertise include deciphering and interpreting cellular records from the various companies?
It does.
And that's not only phone calls, but does that also include the tracking or the use of various devices?
It does.
And the history of the use of those devices?
It does.
Inspector Visalli, I'm placing on the screen what's been entered as exhibit number 249D. Have you had an opportunity to see this document before?
Yes.
And in fact, did you assist in the subpoenaing of this document from AT&T?
I did.
What is this document and what does it tell us?
It's just a history of what they call the IMEI. The IMEI is like the physical device handset, like serial number, which would be different than like the chip. It's different than the SIM card, the chip. That would be the IMSI would be on that number. They have different numbers. The IMEI is the physical handset. It just means every time you buy a phone, of a certain protocol, you would get an IMEI. And basically, it's consistent with the, like for instance, the first 8 digits of it would be the make and model, and, up to first 14 digits actually, mark the actual handset. And you can actually see those, if you look at the AT&T records, they actually show the first 14 digits, if you look on the AT&T records, the hard ones they give you and the ones we subpoena, we'll match them up to time periods. And you can see them, it's, AT&T gets that as part of their records. They actually mark it into their system of the actual IMEI that was used to process the call.
So, for instance, Mr. Visalli, based upon what you're saying, Exhibit 249B, page 17, are these the records that you plotted for the 562-481-8106 number?
Correct.
And does this actually include the IMEI of that phone?
Yeah, it's just shown clearly right there.
That cell phone that was, at least according to these records, in use on July 16, 2012, is that the IMEI that's reflected here in Exhibit 249D?
Yes, the first 14 digits. After that, you deal with the 15 check digit and sometimes the 16 digit. But the first 14 digits would be identical.
And Inspector Visalli, were you asked to determine whether or not that phone, the device itself, not the SIM card, appeared to have been stopped being used and not on the network for any period of time?
Yes, we served a subpoena. I served a subpoena on AT&T through your office, and AT&T had no record of that device ever appearing on their network after this date right here, August 26, 2012.
And when you say it never appears on the network, does that mean that the phone never is used again?
The handset itself, physical handset itself, that's correct.
Can you tell what kind of phone that was?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an Apple iPhone 4S.
And to the best of your knowledge, based upon the records that you assisted in obtaining, that phone, that iPhone 4S, has not been used on any network since?
To the best of my knowledge.
And just by way of explanation, Mr. Visalli, though it may not be particularly relevant here, what is the other IMEI number listed?
Well, it just shows that the phone had a different phone. It had a different phone number. Somebody was using that handset, and actually, looking at the account number, it's the same account, the same subscriber. Everything's the same. Even the IMSI, which is on the SIM card, is the same. It's identical. It just shows that the phone number was changed from 310-330-64. I can't read. That's 50. Just shows that it was changed, and on 6/28, and then this new number started being used on 6/28 and started being used on that handset up until August 26th, 2012, and then there's no record of it after that.
And the subscriber for both of these was the same, correct?
That's correct.
That was Aaron Hernandez?
That's the one we viewed earlier, yes.
Inspector Visalli, I'm showing you what's been entered as Exhibit 249F. Appears to be another IMEI history. Are you familiar with this document, sir?
Yes, that's the IMEI history for the 203-606-8969 number that we looked at the records on.
And that was one of the cell phones that you plotted belonging to Aaron Hernandez back in February of 2013?
That's correct.
Did you assist the Suffolk County DA's office and the Boston Police in obtaining an IMEI history for that phone number?
I did.
And for those who may not get that nuance, what's the difference between an IMEI history for a phone number as opposed to a device?
Well, you put this phone number on the subpoena so that we could see every different device that was used on it that they had a record of. In this case, when they returned it to us, we saw on the records there was a different IMEI that showed up at a different period, but they didn't have a record of it in their billing system. But what you could do actually is you can take unlocked phones and basically put the SIM card in and use the phone at any point. So they had a record of it on their records, but it doesn't show up on this document here.
Now, in addition to this document, Inspector Visalli, did you also take the records themselves, and we don't necessarily have to put them on the screen, but did you check the IMEI numbers for all of the records for that 203 number?
I did.
Hagan, let me pause here. Is everyone's screen working? Yes. Very good.
Is yours not, Your Honor?
It is now.
The IMEI records, sir, you indicated that you could double check what's on this paper from the records themselves.
That's correct.
How do you do that? What do you look for?
You just go through the records on dates and times, and you make sure that the first 14 digits of the IMEI here correspond to what AT&T see on their network, what they're marking on their network when they mark calls.
So considering, sir, what's on this Exhibit 249F, as well as your review of the actual hard records themselves and doing what you described, can you go through what all these entries mean relative to whether or not that phone is switched out, so to speak, on the phone?
Yeah, it just looks, obviously, the handset is being swapped, on these dates. They don't have a record of it. It's, handset's been changed on this 203 number many times since it went active until the day they last had it active.
Well, let's start with the top. This IMEI just is relative to a particular phone, is that correct?
Yeah, that's a RIM, which would be a BlackBerry 9900, would be like a BlackBerry Bold.
And what does it mean that EXP 91412?
Expires just the day their billing system shows, AT&T's billing system shows it expired into in their system.
And from your review of the hard records themselves, did the phone stop being used at about that time?
It did.
But the phone number stayed the same?
Phone would stay the same, it just changed over to a different IMEI number.
The next device that we see,
Objection, Your Honor.
Order.
I was going to say things that have been already covered, but
Let's see if you can cut to the chase on this, Mr. Hagan.
Inspector Visalli, calling your attention now to phone in particular. Is there a phone in particular that you could identify from the records that was the phone being used on February 13th, 2013?
On February 13th?
Yes.
Yes, well, it would be this number, this RIM right here.
And based upon what's on the records and from your review, is it fair to state that that phone was stopped being used at some point and was switched out to a different phone?
It did, it was switched out. There's another one that, it was switched out right actually, there's one that came up in between here. There was one that was used, that's not on here, it was from June 9th to June 18th, was switched out, and that one showed up on a network. It's not on here, but it's on the records. Different IMEI number shows up on the records. Again, not on this report, and that's used during that time period.
So there's a seventh phone on the list that's attached to that phone number that you said was used or activated from June 9th till about June 14th?
Yeah, somebody used that 203 number with, whoever had it, move this. The IMSI number was the same, so it was the same SIM card. They just used a different handset.
But Inspector Visalli, going back to the phone that was in use for that phone number on February 13th, 2013, does it appear that that stopped being used and was switched out to a new phone on a particular date?
The phone on February 13th?
Yes.
Yeah, so on the 26th, obviously, there's a new device.
So on the 26th of March, 2013, that phone was no longer being used.
Correct.
I have no further questions, Inspector. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counsel.
Your Honor, noting it's almost 3, we need to set up.
Then we should take a recess.